Welcome to Talks with Tracy, with certified hypnotherapist, life coach, and licensed mental health professional, Tracy Claremont. Tracy will share her healing journey and explore the many meaningful alternative healing methods in our world today that will support you in doing your own deepest emotional healing. So please welcome the host of Talks with Tracy, Tracy Claremont. Let the suffering end and the healing begin.
Hello and welcome to Talks with Tracy. I am your host, Tracy Claremont, coming to you live on the Bold Brave Television Network today. Thank you all for joining me, and thank you, as always, to Bold Brave Television Network for having me. So here on Talks with Tracy, we talk about emotional healing, and we talk about putting an end to that suffering, because it's, the deep emotional healing that really causes suffering in our lifetime. Now, I've shared my story on Talks with Tracy show 1 and 2. And since that time, I've had lots of guests on who have also shared their stories and talked about their suffering and their journey in healing. So, this is all done for the purpose of joining in sameness and providing an example of what that looks like to do the healing. So it's so important to do the healing because on the other side is relief and freedom and fulfillment and joy. Now, that doesn't mean that life is never without challenges again, because life is life, right? We'll always have challenges. But when we do the emotional healing, we will be better equipped to manage those challenges, and it'll be an easier process for us when we get in there and really heal our core beliefs about ourselves. So today, I want to talk about self-sabotaging behaviors. We all have done them before. Where do they come from? Why do we do things to sabotage ourselves? Why do we do things to potentially ruin all that is good in our life and happening in our life? Where does all that come from? Where are they generated from? These are behaviors that are really damaging to ourselves. And, I know I've engaged in them before, and I have loved ones who have, and I've seen many, many people who have done these things. So I really want to talk about why we engage in behaviors that really potentially destroy all that is good and safe and stable in our life. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Figure out why we do this and where they come from. So now I have had so many people say, I don't know why I do it. I just do. Or I don't know why I always choose the wrong partner. Or I knew it was wrong and I did it anyway. Why? Why do we do that? So it is my belief and my knowing, in fact, that these self-sabotaging behaviors, they're all generated from that core sense of self that we have, that core belief about ourselves that we hold deep within. And this comes from experiences we have had, and there's emotions attached that are stuck in there that, drive us forward. They color our perceptions. They dictate how we experience life. They govern our behaviors. It's all related to the core beliefs and the emotions attached. And all of this comes from our past experience. Now, I have had so many people talk about a very dark I'm not enoughness self-belief over my 30 plus years of being a mental health therapist and being a hypnotherapist, my own experience of people I love, have all described this core belief to me, so much so that I decided to give it a name. So now, just a heads up, all of my little friends at Martha's Daycare, I'm going to be using some cuss words today, but none of you can repeat the cuss words. So please don't run outside and be using the words that I'm going to use today on Talks with Tracy. You may not, but I really need to capture, I need to be real, and I need to capture the experience that people have described to me and use the words that they have used with me. So I call this I'm a piece of shit syndrome. Now, it may sound harsh, and I don't mean to make it sound harsh. I also don't mean to make fun of it. I'm not trying to be funny. It may sound kind of funny, but there's nothing funny about this core belief at all. This is actually a core belief that takes so many people right down into a deep pit of shame and despair. It's a very serious thing. This is where sabotaging behaviors come from. This is where depression lies. This is where anxiety lies. This is where addictive behaviors lie. This is even where self-harm and suicidal behaviors lie. It's where narcissistic abuse behaviors lie. It's just in the muck and the sludge of a core belief of not enoughness, or as I say, I'm a piece of shitness. Okay, so now in preparing for this podcast, I did a quick Google search to see if this term was already out there. I don't know everything that's out there, so I just put it in Google to see if it was already a thing, and I didn't find it in those words. I did find something that was kind of interesting to me. I found this term called shit life syndrome, which sounded kind of interesting. Apparently, this is a term that physicians in the UK and the United States use to describe when a patient has symptoms related to poverty and trauma. So now that's different than what I'm talking about, because that's like an outside source assigning a label of shit life syndrome to other people, right? That's not what I'm doing. I am certainly not saying that these people are a piece of shit. That's not me. This is a belief that's coming from them. So it's different. This is something that's actually generated by the person within. So that's a different thing. There's also a thing that Brene Brown talks about. I'm sure all of you have heard of Brene Brown. Oh my gosh, she's incredibly inspirational, a writer, a speaker, a researcher. She talks about a thing called a shitty first draft. Now, this is very close to what I'm talking about. So she talks about a shitty first draft being our brain's immediate interpretation of an event. So our brain, its main job is to keep us alive. So when we experience something new, we're in a current circumstance, our brains will refer back to our experiences to interpret the situation. So now our brain doesn't look at the current facts and what's going on right now. It actually just looks back into our past experience and it interprets what's happening. So very often these interpretations, since they're colored by our past experiences, are not accurate. But that's what our brains do. She calls that a shitty first draft because it is often inaccurate. So I talk about that as well, as far as our core beliefs about ourselves coloring our perception and moving us through our life. And our core belief is basing those beliefs on our past experiences. All right, so if our core belief is, I'm a piece of shit, your brain will automatically jump to that conclusion when it's trying to interpret a current situation. And it's a false belief. It's not true, but it's something that we have learned to believe about ourselves. So I'll just give you a quick example. Excuse me. My husband, years ago, he had applied for a job, and it was a grounds maintenance job, entry-level position. And he'd interviewed, he had been told that he would hear by the end of the day whether or not he got the position. Well, the end of the day for those workers was 5:30. And about 5 o'clock, I was with him and he was like, see, tribal housing doesn't even want Todd Berlin to mow their lawns. And he was like, whoosh, deep diving into his pit of not enoughness. And his brain was making an interpretation that wasn't accurate. So he immediately went to this place of I'm a piece of shitness, right? And I was like, it's not the end of the day. Maybe they wait till the last minute. Maybe they'll call tomorrow even. That's a possibility. And he was like, no, they don't even want me. And he left, and I went back to what I was doing. And then 30 minutes later, he gets the call and he's like, I guess they do want Todd Berlin to mow their lawns. And he was like, I got the job. And since then, he's been promoted to other positions and steadily been promoted within the program, right? And And that was a shitty first draft that my husband was having, and it was based on his past experience. So that's just a quick example of how this all works. We start having experiences immediately when we're born. I would argue that we have experiences even before we're born. I've had in utero experiences in hypnotherapy. I've talked about womb memories before, when I'm doing hypnotherapy or under hypnosis myself. So, but these all experiences, they all collect, they gather, our minds file them away, and that refers back to them frequently. The ones that have big emotion attached to the ones that come flying to the forefront when we're trying to interpret things. So now, last week I had psychic medium Lisa Adams on the show. I really enjoyed her. She talked about this when we were talking about relationships. She said one of the most common questions she gets in readings is, or a very common question she gets is my partner cheating? Well, she went on to say, yes, she does get asked this frequently, but she also went on to say that when this happens, it's always about the person who is cheating. It's never about the person who has been cheated on, or even about the person that they're cheating with, right? It's about the person who's doing the behavior, always about the person who's doing the behavior. And if that person who's doing the cheating behavior does not change, the behavior does not look deep inside and say, why am I doing this? Why am I treating myself and other people like this? Well, then the behavior will just continue on, right? Maybe they'll leave the partner they cheated on and they'll get with the partner that they were cheating with, and they'll just repeat the patterns because it has nothing to do with those people. It has all to do with them and their own beliefs about themselves. So that was something that she mentioned last week that really fit in with, this I'm a piece of shit syndrome topic today. So I just wanted to mention that. All right. So again, why? Why would we mess up things when things are going well for us? Why would we sabotage ourselves? Why would we do those things? Well, again, it's all related to our core beliefs about ourselves. These emotional wounds, they're just right there, festering, bubbling, impacting us, even when we don't even know it. We don't even know it. So again, as Lisa was saying last week, and as I am saying now, it is so important to do the work, to do the work, to do the healing. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So I did mention my husband. I'm going to be sharing his story. He gave me permission to do that. I'm going to be talking about his experience with this core belief of I'm a piece of shit syndrome, this I'm a piece of shitness. I'm going to be talking about how it's shown itself, how it developed in his life, how he had to do the healing around it so that he could change his behaviors and experience a peaceful, safe, and stable lifetime. And then I'm going to also, in the next couple of shows, be talking to a couple other men. I'm really wanting to get the male experience. So we've got a lot of female experience here so far, and I'm really looking to hear from the male perspective about this, because I think this I'm a piece of shit syndrome is highly prevalent in our male population, right? There's so much expectation placed on the men in our world, the achievement based beliefs, and there's so little opportunity or encouragement for and support for men to express and talk about their emotional experience and be vulnerable. It's just not encouraged in our society. It really isn't. So it's very common for men to go to this place of developing a not enough, not good enough core belief, and really not have any way or any person or knowledge of how to talk about it, how to do the healing. So that's what I would like to be doing today and in the next couple of shows, is focusing on the male perspective, the male experience. And I'm going to start with this syndrome that I have coined myself as I'm a piece of shit syndrome. My husband is an incredible human being. He is far from being a piece of shit, but unfortunately, for the majority of his life, this kind of thought, core belief, moved him through his world. So that's what we are going to be talking about today. It's a lot to wrap your brain around. We are going to go to a commercial break now. And when we come back, I am going to be sharing his story, talking about his experience from this I'm a piece of shit syndrome perspective, and always from the perspective of healing, joining in sameness. So we're going to cut to a commercial break. Please join me when we come back. And you are watching Talks with Tracy with me, Tracy Claremont, coming to you live on the Bold Brave Television Network. I'll see you in a couple minutes.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back to Talks with Tracy with me, Tracy Claremont, coming to you live on the Bold Brave Television Network. Today I am talking about self-sabotaging behaviors. Why do we do them? Where do they come from? Why would we ever want to sabotage everything that's good in our lives? Well, we do it all the time. So now before the break, I just introduced this term that I made up based on my experience with in my profession and experience in my personal life, and I just kind of made it up based on the words that people use in describing their own beliefs about themselves. It might sound a little harsh, but I want to keep it real, and it really is what people have described to me. So it is called I'm a piece of shit syndrome. That is something that I've just kind of decided to call this belief, this core belief about self that I've heard so many times, Oh, okay. From people who I work with and in my personal life. So have you ever heard that Jelly Roll song called Save Me? Well, if you haven't and you want to know what I'm a piece of shit syndrome sounds like and looks like, listen to this song. It is definitely a great description of that. It's actually a beautiful song. I really love it, but it really is talking about a very troubled core belief about self and behaviors that result from that. So I will spare you my singing voice. My kids would be so embarrassed if I busted out this song on the show like I do in the car. I won't do that, but I do want to talk about lyrics in it. So first off, he says that he's living in hell, right? Well, I said that this is a very dark, dark, dark place. It's a place of shame and despair to be when you have this core belief about yourself. So the lyrics go on to describe how he numbs the feeling with substances, right? And that's the only way he's found peace. This is also very common. We numb those deep, dark emotions, and they're so painful to experience. We turn to substances to numb that. So now then the song goes on to describe the actual core beliefs. And he says, I'm a lost cause. I'm a waste of time. I'm damaged beyond repair. This is I'm a piece of shit syndrome, right? Those are core beliefs that come along with that not enoughness, not good enoughness. Uh, so yeah, and he says that life has shattered his hopes and his dreams. Absolutely, those experiences in life have caused him to feel shattered inside. So, and he holds on to anything that sets him free. Again, the substances, the numbing, trying to escape those emotions. So this is very common. And it's a beautiful song that I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. But this is somebody caught up in their core beliefs of unworthiness, not enoughness, I'm a piece of shitness. Okay, so now I mentioned my husband in the first segment. I mentioned that he has suffered from this syndrome for the majority of his life. Now, he is far from a piece of shit. He's such a beautiful person. I am not saying that at all. In fact, I love and adore him. But it is a fact that for the majority of his life, this was a thought and a feeling that moved him forward in his life. Now, thankfully, he's done healing around this. But I wanted to share a story. So my husband, he's a dude, right? And I say that with nothing but love and respect, but he's not used to sharing his emotional experiences. He's not used to telling his story from a perspective of emotional healing. And he's not, he's just not used to that kind of talk. So he declined my request for him to come on the show, but he did give me full permission to actually share his story with you. So I'm going to do that today just to provide an example of what it looks like, from a male perspective. Sorry. And share his story about this core belief. All right, so a little backstory. My husband is the second of 4 children. He was raised by both his mom and his dad. His dad was a heavy drinker, and he was physically and verbally abusive towards my husband. So of all the kids, he received the brunt of the abuse. He was the one who was always disappointing his dad from his dad's perspective or from what his dad told him. And he really was shamed a lot in his childhood, couldn't do anything right. And this is very hard for my husband. So, he also was told that he looked the most like his dad. Now, this is significant because it's significant to his story because so often the shame that we carry isn't even our shame to carry. It's the shame of our caretakers, right? It's the shame of our parents that we then carry into our lifetimes. And now I believe it's highly likely that my husband's father instilled in my husband his own shame from that sense of not being enough, not measuring up. And then he made that shame so familiar to my husband that my husband took it on as his own shame, as it often happens. So he essentially learned shame from his father. And then he also had these really abusive experiences with his father. So just like we can instill shame in a dog, right? Like if the dog jumps on the couch and we're like, get down, and we're yelling at the dog's tail is between its legs and its head is down. It's it's like a shameful experience. Well, certainly we can instill shame in other humans, right? If we continually tell them that they are not enough, that they have failed, that they are, and they're effing everything up, then we also instill shame in them. And this is how my husband's dad was with him. He took out his anger and his rage on my husband verbally and physically, telling him constantly that he was worthless, and physically beating him. Now, Todd's mother, my mother-in-law Judy, she was present during this time, but she was also in this abusive relationship with Todd's father, and she told me that she tried to get out of this situation many times, but she was just powerful against this big raging man. So that was his experience throughout his childhood. Unfortunately, um, he was, frequently compared to his father. You look just like your dad. You act just like your dad. Now, I don't know if people who made those statements to him meant any harm, but certainly that did harm to him. I mean, who wants to be the same as somebody who has caused so much hurt and pain in your lifetime? Who wants to be told that you're like that? Well, eventually, when you're told that so many times, the message is received, right? And you get stuck in that belief. So this just reinforced Todd's core belief about himself that I'm a piece of shit. I hurt people. I disappoint people. I F everything up. Belief. So now he did try to gain his father's good favor. He wanted more than anything to be right in his father's eyes, but he just wasn't ever able to do that. So he went to school. He was in sports. He had a shared common interest with his father in racing cars, things like that. But it just never quite was enough. So um, all of this turned into even greater tragedy. Todd's senior year in school, he was at a basketball tournament with his brother and his cousin in a different town when they received word that his father had chosen to kill himself. He committed suicide. So now this is his dad acting on those feelings of not enoughness and those feelings of shame, right? It ultimately manifested in suicide. So now, if we could just think about this, what does that do to a kid who has always been the source of his father's upset? What does that do to a kid who's always been blamed for his father's rage? Well, I can assure you that it adds to that awful, um, unworthy, not enough, I'm a piece of shit core sense of self. And I would guess, although I don't know this, I would guess that Todd's subconscious mind took some responsibility for his father's choice to kill himself. Now, was he responsible? Absolutely not. That was all his father's choice and doing. And it had nothing to do with Todd. But when you're a kid, I mean, you take on responsibility for so many things that are not yours to be responsible for. So it really added to that core sense of I am a piece of shitness. All right. So that was Todd's senior year. He actually ended up dropping out 2 weeks before he was going to graduate. I mean, how self-sabotaging is that? He had already started drinking before then. He was rolling in some pretty self-destructive behavior. He did go into the National Guard, but I'm feeling like there was already so much going on for him in regard to his emotional experience and his numbing it with alcohol and things like that, that wasn't enough to pull him out of years of self-destructive behavior to follow. All right, so um, he just really cared very little about himself, and he kind of became the embodiment of that Jelly Roll song, actually. He turned to alcohol to numb his emotional pain. He engaged in high-risk behaviors because he didn't care about himself. He didn't really care if he was ambivalent about life. There's so many people that are ambivalent about life, which means, I'm not actively suicidal, but, if I stepped into the street today and I got hit by a bus, okay, whatever. That's ambivalence about life. And that happens when you have such a poor sense of self. All right. So he ended up engaging in a lot of alcohol-related behaviors. He got DUIs that placed him in prison. He told me once that he didn't like prison. Nobody likes prison, but it really wasn't that hard for him because he was used to being alone when surrounded by people. So this feeling of being completely alone, it was nothing new to him. And in that, he was telling me um, that that's what he was familiar with. Our minds like what's familiar. And he was completely familiar with this feeling of being alone while surrounded by people. So he just rolled on with this. He spent 15 years in prison. It was a long road. Anyway, so he and we ended up connecting in our late 40s. And I remember our first meeting, I asked him to tell me about himself, and he said, well, I'm a 3-time felon. And I was like, ew, that's what you lead with? That's what you tell people about yourself? What about other things? Are you a dad? Are you a son? What do you work? All of these things. Well, that was another example of him leading with his core beliefs and his shitty first draft, right? So we ended up coming together and launching into a relationship in this moment. Me working on myself, him working on himself. We are soulmates. I know that because we have held up a mirror. He's held up a mirror to me, and I've held up a mirror to him. So in my next segment, I'm going to talk about what it looked like being in a relationship, how this all played itself out, and how the healing happened in relationships. So please join me for that. We're going to take a brief commercial break. You're watching Talks with Tracy with me, Tracy Claremont, coming to you live on the Bold Brave Television Network. I'll see you in a couple minutes.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
It was almost instant, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back to Talks with Tracy with me, Tracy Claremont, coming to you live from the Bold Brave Television Network. So today I am talking about self-sabotaging behaviors. Where do they come from? Why do they happen? Why do we do them, right? So I've been sharing my husband's story today, and with his permission, of course. And unfortunately, my husband has gone through the majority of his lifetime with a core belief of not enoughness, of I mess everything up. I'm not good enough. I cause pain. I hurt people. This kind of I'm a piece of shitness that I am talking about today. So thankfully, he has done healing around that. And I am just really thankful that he has chosen to do that healing around that core belief. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to be in relationship with him. It's too painful to be in relationship with people who move through the world with that kind of core belief. So now I mentioned at the end of the last segment that I do believe ours is a soulmate relationship. And in soulmate relationships, you hold up a mirror to each other. So he holds up a mirror to me. I hold up a mirror to him. And we support each other. We kind of push each other into our healing that we've come here to do. So I would love to say that as soon as me and my husband got together, all of these self-destructive behaviors, these self-sabotaging behaviors, they just went away with my love and support. Wouldn't that be beautiful? Well, that's not how this works. It's not that easy, right? So that didn't happen. He did have self-sabotaging behaviors that continued to rear their ugly heads in the course of our relationship. And maybe our relationship was even a trigger for those behaviors, because this was our relationship was based on love and respect. It still is. It always has been. And he had never had a relationship like that. In fact, he had never had a healthy relationship in sobriety. He'd never had a relationship in sobriety. And now he was experiencing this. So that alone may have been a trigger for his core beliefs of not enoughness and brought about self-sabotaging behaviors. It's kind of that thinking of, and our subconscious mind is telling us that eventually they're going to see, what a piece of shit I am. And eventually I'm going to cause harm and hurt. And that's who I am. That's how I always have been. So I'm just going to bring it to fruition and cause the hurting and the pain and be in charge of that. That often happens with people. All right. So, very often those things happen, and we had some of that. So when he engaged in self-sabotaging behaviors that were hurtful to me in our relationship, it challenged me in regard to my own healing. Do you remember me saying that some of my own life lessons, the majority of them revolve around standing up for myself, using my voice, putting myself first, loving myself, not sacrificing myself for others? Well, I was challenged in this regard when his self-destructive, self-sabotaging behaviors would arise in the context of our relationship. Now, I won't lie, it was hard. It was a rocky road for a while, for sure. So, eventually there was a behavior, an action that he engaged in that was actually absolutely unacceptable to me. And I was put in a position to either stay within it and wallow in it or do something about it. Part of my learning, well, when he engaged in self-sabotaging behavior, I decided to stand up for myself. I decided to love myself more. Now, this is all very scary. Who wants to be in a marriage that you have to do that in, and limits that you have to set, and possibly get divorced? I don't know, right? It's not what you choose, but when the challenge presents itself, when it is there, we have to choose what we're going to do. Are we going to move on with our healing, or are we going to stay stuck? Well, I chose to move on with my healing. So when things came to a head and my husband engaged in self-sabotaging behavior that was very hurtful and detrimental to me, I loved myself more, and I gave him the boot. I was like, you got to go. I'm not going to be in a relationship with you like this. Now, that's like a lot more calm and, put together than it actually looked at the time, for sure, because I was caught up in emotion and it was incredibly painful, but I did. I had him leave. I made the choice to love myself more. And now that put him in a position of him making a personal choice, right? He could do the healing. He could do that deep dive in and figure out where these behaviors are coming from and change the beliefs and change the behavior, or he could just continue on and stay stuck in these emotions and this core belief and continue rolling on with his life of self-destruction. He had the choice. So thankfully, he made the choice to do the healing. That was his to make. I couldn't do it for him. I couldn't make him do it. I just had to sit back and hope that he did. Now I did have something in my back pocket, and that was a reading by Lisa Adams years before this. And in that reading, she told me that there was going to come a time when our relationship would have a rupture, in which we would then be separated, right? And it would be based around actions of my husband. And I remember getting this reading so long before we were married, and I'm like, no, why would I want to have another broken marriage? No, I don't want this. And she was like, I said separated, not divorced. And she told me he will do the work. And I appreciated that. And she said that the work would be around healing childhood injuries and wounds. But he would do that work, and he would do it in his way. And I couldn't tell him how to do it. He would have to do it his way, but he would do the work. We would come together, and we would have a successful marriage based on the healing that we have done. So I really held on to that. I never did tell Todd about that reading, when it happened or anything like that. But I held on to that, and it really helped me. That guidance really helped me. So anyway, how did Todd get this train back on the tracks? It was way off, and he spent a lot of forced time alone, right? I told him to go. I can't do this. And he had to reflect. He had to be accountable for, well, he didn't have to. In that time, he reflected. He chose to reflect. He chose to be accountable. He chose to be honest with himself about how he feels about himself and why he's doing this, why he risked all that was good in his life, right? Why he engaged in the self-sabotaging behaviors. So he listened to some podcasts about how childhood trauma impacts our life today, our present day. He learned from that. He really started working on developing a new narrative for himself. He started developing a new narrative of who he is. And it was a much more true narrative. He'd been operating on these false beliefs for so long. He had to develop a new narrative. So now Brené Brown refers to this as the improved second draft. Remember, we had the shitty first draft? Well, now he was creating an improved second draft, and he did this. So this is, he had to say, this is how I used to be. This is what I used to do. And that's not me now. This is me today. This is how I am today. This is how I believe. This is what I believe about myself today. And it's a much more accurate picture of yourself, a picture of worthiness, because we're all worthy. So, he did things like, he loves to ride his Harley. That gets his, adrenaline fix. He joined a sober Indian riders, bikers group. That was all part of him rewriting his narrative, right? He is a sober Indian. He's proud of it. He does things in the community around that. It builds him up. It makes him feel good. So he started doing those kind of things. He connected with some good male friends who were supportive of him. And he was accountable to myself, to our kids, and to, really committed and really showed value in our relationships as a family. So now, these are some of the things that he did. Now, not too long ago, we were driving down the road, and that song came on, that Jelly Roll song came on, and he looked at me and he said, "You saved me, baby." And I said, what a beautiful thing to say, and thank you, I appreciate that. But you really saved yourself, right? You had to do the work yourself. You had to change your behaviors and your thoughts about yourself. So you did all that. You saved yourself. And then I quickly dropped it because I didn't want a beautiful moment to turn into a therapy session, right? So I left it at that. But that really is what he did. He saved himself. So now this, I don't want to make this sound like it happened overnight. This took months and months. We were separated for months and months until he did this work, and until I could trust him enough again to share my life with him, to come back together with him. So there's some very important things to remember in this. And I really want you to understand words are so powerful and our minds are always listening. In fact, every word that you say becomes a blueprint that your mind and body work to meet and then turn into your reality. I'm going to say that again. That every word you say then becomes a blueprint that your mind and body work to turn into your reality. So the words that we say, thank you, hiccups. The words that we say is, and yes, you're right, this is such a scary, hard process, but you know what? If we prioritize ourselves and we love ourselves, it is such a beautiful outcome. So yes, be fearless, do the work. Uh, tell yourself the right things, paint the right pictures in your minds. Don't be afraid to do that deep dive inward and be honest with yourself and really do that healing. We are all worthy. We are all enough. We are all here with purpose and reason. I'm going to talk about that more in the next segment. You know, there's help out there for you. You can do mental health therapy, you can do hypnotherapy, you can just go to a good trusted friend and be vulnerable and share, but do the work. Do the work. Show yourself the same forgiveness and understanding and compassion that you show your children. Be kind to yourself. All right, so it's time to take another brief commercial break. You're watching Talks with Tracy with me, Tracy Claremont, coming to you live on Bold Brave Television Network. Please join me after the break.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. We discover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back to Talks with Tracy with me, Tracy Claremont, coming to you live on the Bold Brave Television Network. Thank you all so much for joining me again. Today I've been talking about self-sabotaging behaviors and core beliefs, and at the end of the last segment, I was just doing my best to encourage people to not be afraid to do that deep dive inward into your emotional experience so that you can experience the relief. You know, so that's what I was talking about before the break, and I was talking about how the words we use in our heads really create a blueprint for our reality. So it's so important, the words that we use. So anyway, so it's just important to be honest, be fearless, look inward. And recognize that when you have core beliefs of unworthiness, these are false beliefs. This isn't the truth about you. The truth is that we're all enough, right? That we are all worthy, that we all matter. And even if our parents didn't want us, the universe wants us. There's proof by our very existence, right? The universe wanted us to be here. We have purpose. We have meaning. We are here for a reason. So that's just so important to recognize that we're all an important part of this universal tapestry. So Marissa Peer, founder of the Rapid Transformational Therapy technique, which I'm certified in and I love doing, she actually says that when we are born, we are actually the very closest to the truth about ourselves. That's when we're the very closest to the truth about ourselves, that we are enough. And I love this thought. She says that as babies, we still have what we were born with, but then begin to lose after we're born. And that is the birthright of confidence. That is our birthright that we then begin to lose with experience. But we're all entitled to that. And we can have this. We can have this back, So a baby doesn't cry unless it has some kind of pain or discomfort. And then as caretakers, we try to figure out what the pain and discomfort is, right? We feed them, we change their diaper, we burp them, we hope that they're going to fart, all these kind of things, right? Well, that's because they're reacting to pain and discomfort. A baby isn't thinking that you just don't want to help them because they're not worth it, right? They don't project false beliefs onto what the future holds for them. They don't feel afraid of things that haven't even happened yet. So they base their feelings on exactly what is happening in the present moment, and they're completely comfortable in their own greatness. Well, that's what we want to get back to, right? We can be that way too. Each of us has full power and ability to control our own thoughts. So Marissa Peer, she says that everything you feel is the result of two things, and that's the words that we say and the pictures we create in our imagination. That's what all our feelings are based on. So use good words, use better words, create beautiful pictures, create pictures of success and fulfillment and happiness and positive relationship. Because if you use the wrong words, you create the wrong reality. The mind is all powerful, as are you. So, you can do things like you can write some words that you want your mind to hear and see. Write them down on a piece of paper. Stick them up on the wall. I am enough. I am beautiful. I'm going to get this job. Whatever it is, put it up for you to see, or say it in the mirror. Talk to yourself in the mirror. Tell yourself that you're worthy. Tell yourself you love yourself. Tell yourself you look beautiful. All of those things. When I first started, Caleb and I were just talking, Caleb the engineer, and I were just talking about like the progression from the first show to this show. And, in that first show, I was terrified. I was scared to death to do it. But rather than saying, oh my God, I'm so scared, I said, I'm excited to do this. There's not a whole lot of difference between the physical feeling in our body of being afraid and being excited, right? Like rapid heartbeat, hands shaking, brain kind of spinning, all of that comes with both fear and excitement. So I told myself I was excited rather than scared until I was actually excited, and it became my reality. So do that for yourself. I want to end today with just a quick example of this from Marissa Peer's book, I Am Enough. So she gives a beautiful example of what the opposite of not enough looks like, right? And what it can sound like. So these are the words she said, and this is a quote. She says, instead of not enough, say I am enough. I am here with something valuable to offer. Love, happiness, success are all available to me. I connect with people easily because I belong to life, and I am always supported. I'm always supported. I'm always supported by people. I'm always supported by the universe. Those are Marissa Peer's words to live by, and I love that. So just a funny quick story. My husband was actually my 8th grade sweetheart. He was my very first boyfriend. I don't even know how we connected because we lived in different towns, but we did. I had my very first date with him. My parents took us to the Plains Fair, and we had a beautiful first date. It was our last date. It was our one and only date at the time. But because then we lost touch. We had landlines. We had to sit in the kitchen and talk on the phone, and everybody could hear back then. So we came full circle and came back together in our 40s, and I'm so thankful. He's actually here. He came in. Come on over here, hon. Everybody, this is my husband, Todd Berland. I'm going to get emotional. I love him. And I just want to say thank you, babe, for doing the healing, for really doing the work so that you and I can be successful and have our life together. So, do you want to say anything?
I am loved and I love. I am enough.
Oh, nice. Yay, I am enough. Wonderful. All right. So next week on Talks with Tracy, I'm going to continue to share the male perspective. I have a guest on by the name of Josh Dodds, and he'll be talking about his experience and his healing. So please join me for that. You've been watching Talks with Tracy here on Bold Brave Television Network. I'll see you next week.
This has been Talks with Tracy. Join us each week as Tracy and her guests will come together and realize that underneath it all, we are all the same and never alone. So join us each week and let Talks with Tracy be your safe place to land in your healing journey. Right here, Thursdays, 11 a.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.